Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I want to talk about Ornn, the fire below the mountain, and give my first few impressions on the champion. Now, I haven't had a good opportunity to play him, I will completely admit. He has been very pick or ban despite being not very strong in my opinion, but I still have seen him enough to give you a few of my first thoughts on the new champion. First, like I said before, I do feel that Ornn is a little bit underpowered, and I think part of that is because of how clunky his kit feels to play. A lot of other tanks have very smooth kits to play, especially Galio, I think, is a good example of a recent tank who has a very smooth kit. It feels like you can Justice Punch in, slam, taunt, slam, Q, slam. It all feels very natural, it feels very fluid, and it feels pretty good to use. Meanwhile, Ornn's kit doesn't really have that same level of fluidity behind it. If you use your W for the damage, you pretty much want to use the auto attack afterwards for damage, but then the brittle is gone and then you won't get the bonus knock up from your E, and if you use your Q, you have to wait for a while before the pillar forms, before you can E, and by that point the enemy's already left the area of effect, and it just doesn't feel like Ornn combos well together at all, in fights or in lane. He just doesn't play well together almost with his own abilities, which feels really weird to me, and I'm not a big fan of how that plays. I think that's a big reason why Ornn is not that strong at the moment, because he just doesn't play well together. His scalings are also all over the place. He has an AD scaling on his Q, he has an AP scaling on his ultimate, his other two abilities either don't have a scaling at all or have scaling with defenses. It feels like Ornn, for the most part, is all over the place, and that's not really in a good way. He has the tools to be very successful, I think, for sure, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't play well together. Now, I do think that Ornn has some strong parts about his kit, and I can see the potential in Ornn. He just needs some buffs. I think his ultimate is very strong. It summons behind the enemy champions, which makes the slow and the brittle almost impossible to avoid, so an Ornn is able to use that from a long distance to set it up. The fact that he can redirect it after they're slowed is really strong as well. You're able to get the knock-up on probably your initial target and maybe even his friends as they move to try and protect him. I think that's a really good combo. And his passive is incredibly strong. Being able to forge items while out of combat, I think, makes Ornn a very good top laner and possibly jungle. A friend of mine was talking about starting with Hunter's Potion in the jungle. Starting with Hunter's Potion, nothing else. Getting a good pull on your first camp. Buying Hunter's Talisman and then just jungling forever. I think that's pretty strong, that Ornn almost never has to recall if he wants to buy items alone. And I think the fact that he offers upgraded versions of his items for his allies is also really good because it almost guarantees that you have the late game. Sure, you might get beaten around early and it isn't really gold efficient to buy Ornn's upgrades immediately, but in the late game where you have excess gold and nothing to spend it on, or having an Ornn upgrade in your pocket is a really good feeling, and it basically makes you feel like, yeah, no, we're going to be fine in the late game because we all have more gold to spend than they do. So those aspects of Ornn I really do like and I really think are strong. The problem I have is with the rest of his kit. His Q doesn't feel like it does that much damage. As I mentioned, the pillar forms too slowly for it to really combo with his E. W, I think, is a reasonably strong skill. The biggest problem I have is that you can't redirect the motion of the flames. You basically pick a direction and he walks in that direction. So if you're trying to kite backwards with the W, if you're in a bad situation, for example, and you really want the shield and unstoppable, but the problem is you can't also spew flames at your enemies while you're doing that. So it weakens Ornn's overall utility, I feel. I think that making it act like a quirky Gatling gun would be too strong, but at the same time, I feel like the way it works currently is not strong enough. And Searing Charge, I do think, is a good skill for Ornn to have. That's his way into the fight. That's his secondary follow-up to the initiation from his ultimate. However, I do feel like it just doesn't combo well enough with the Q. I would love that pillar to pop up a little bit sooner. Other than that, I feel like Ornn almost has to be played with another champion who can form terrain at will, so he has terrain available to charge at and detonate. Something like a support Trundle or a mid Anivia would combo really well with Ornn, because even if you don't block off an enemy with the terrain, you can use it to set up an Ornn W or an Ornn E for the knockup and get the sort of pseudo initiation from there. All that being said, I feel like Ornn could definitely use some buffs. I'm not sure where Riot will buff him. I feel like if you made his Q pillar form more quickly, it makes him very, very strong, especially in lane, because he can almost guarantee get the knockup. And it's a long knockup as well. That ability does a lot of damage and has a very long knockup. So I think you can't make the knockup too reliable. At the same time, though, I think you need to do something to make Ornn's kit feel better. Now, again, this is just my opinion over the first couple of days. I haven't had that much time to play Ornn, especially given that he's been almost pick or ban for the most part. But I do think that Ornn needs some kind of love. I think he's a little bit underpowered, which isn't a bad thing, but he definitely needs some attention. I think he's a very interesting Vanguard. He brings a lot of interesting tools to the table, and it will be interesting to see how people adapt to playing him as he kind of goes on in the patch cycle and potentially gets buffs. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts on Ornn down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys are building on him, where you guys are playing him, and what you guys think of his kit. I know I think he's clunky, but maybe a couple of you guys think he's not. If so, please let me know. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. If you really enjoy the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later.